Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just been to see Skate Kitchen, a narrative film from a director who has previously done documentary.
Yes.
It's her first narrative. The director's name is Crystal Moselle. You've seen the film she did before this, right?
Wolfpack. I've seen Wolfpack, yeah, which I actually forget the details of it. It was like about a group of brothers who were being raised by their father in a New York apartment. And if I remember correctly, they barely left the apartment, and the father took care of them, and they were really bonded. That's all I can remember about it. But I remember liking it very much, and being very impressed with it.
Well, that's good. I have not seen Wolfpack. This is set in New York about a group of girls skating, and it's based on real life. Actually, rather like The Rider, which we saw earlier today as well.
Yes.
It's based it uses not only non-professional actors, but it's actually based around their real lives.
Yes.
So this is a story of a girl called Camille, who's played by Rochelle Winberg, who is a skater, and it draws upon her life, kind of coming to New York and making friends in skating. But it also draws on this group of girls who call themselves Skate Kitchen, and they elaborated on the name for their group in the Q&A. We should say there was a Q&A following the film just now.
Yeah, let's be explicit and let's give credit, actually. So thank you very much to the Electric Cinema for bringing the director and a large part of the very attractive cast to come and talk to us after the screening of the film, because an enjoyable film was actually kind of rendered even more so through the possibilities of being able to ask questions about it, which I think we are now using in this podcast.
Yeah. So this group of girls call themselves Skate Kitchen, and in the Q&A they elaborated on the name, which it should be kind of obvious, really. I mean, it's kind of obvious to me just from the title of the movie, the idea of Skate Kitchen of being basically as a group of girls in a reasonably male-dominated world of skating, always being told, get back in the kitchen, that's where you belong. And so making it their own, and saying, well, every skate park in New York is our kitchen.
Yes.
Which is great.
Yes, it is.
And there is a real kind of sense of female empowerment in the film.
Yes, very much so.
Which is great. And also, as you pointed out in the Q&A, intersectionality. In fact, there's only one white person, really. There's Hispanics and there's black people and a white girl amongst them, and skating brings them together, and they will get on famously, except when they don't, when there's conflict.
Yes.
So that's where the narrative comes in.
The film does very interesting things, because on the one hand, the girl says, how she was a tomboy, and she lived with her father, and basically as soon as puberty hit, the relationship with her father changed, and she had to go live with her mother. But, there is like this whole other discussion of, tampons and how to use them and things that she's not familiar with and what a vagina looks like and whether it's healthy.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of all of these conversations that the girls have. But what I found really interesting is that the film complicates things. So, for example, the girl is like this real tomboy and so on. But on the other hand, she very clearly expresses she likes boys. And of course, that's not a contradiction. But sometimes people make it want to seem so. Yeah, that kind of, if you dress a certain way, or if you behave, if you're into skateboarding and, and you say you're a tomboy and you like kind of doing things, then somehow you're in the closet about your true sexuality or something. So, I think the film does very interesting things in overturning your prejudices and your presumptions in relation to kind of gender specifically.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really felt the sense of kind of authenticity around the girls' interactions before knowing that it was based on real life interactions. But like the director said, as much as sort of hanging around with the girls, occasionally sort of conversations that they had would basically make their way verbatim into the script.
Yes.
You can tell that sort of authenticity, and you can tell the relationship they have as a group of non-professional actors are very natural. These are girls who know each other.
Yes.
And also that sense of authenticity of this is the kind of stuff that girls actually talk about. Again, this came up in the Q&A, the idea that sort of you can tell when movies have been written by men who have no idea how women speak, really.
Yes.
And this is the absolute opposite of that. Like, some of the conversation is dirty, and it's about things that you don't expect if you're a guy. And it's very funny as well.
Yes. I enjoyed that very much. I also liked, so there is kind of like a spectrum of people, all of which are given individuality. So, I was talking about, the tomboy who liked boys and whatever. There's also a really charismatic lesbian girl in the film who makes no bones about it.
Nina Moran, I think she is.
Yeah, and who's rather wonderful. And there are also kind of like these interesting kind of things. So for example, one of the girl's fathers is shown to be like, very nurturing, and, the girls come over and stay in their house. And actually for a moment, and this is, how Hollywood trains us to see, I expected some disturbance. I expected some potential improper sexual advance, or, and instead he just turns out to be like this really nice guy who cooks lasagna for the girls and, and is very nurturing and loving of his daughter, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, the sexual advance that I was expecting in the film was from Jaden Smith's character, who is the boy who kind of threatens to break up the group because there's a conflict in the skate park. There's a conflict between the group of girls and a group of boys, and they have conflicts over who gets to skate where and when, and you're in our spot and this, that, and the other. And what threatens to and what does kind of break up Camille with the group is when she starts hanging out with one of the boys, because she works in the same shop as him. Yeah. This is Jaden Smith's character, and then he turns out has previously gone out with one of the girls. But something that you've been saying a lot recently, which is this idea of guys in cinema starting to be depicted as having no sexual desire. All the other boys were always bragging about, I slept with this girl, I was fingering this girl, wherever it was, and taking the piss out of each other and stuff. But Jaden Smith's character doesn't do any of that. And when he talks about his ex-girlfriend, he says the reason they broke up was because she wasn't happy with them just being friends, which was obviously his what he wanted from their friendship. And then when he starts making out with Camille, when they're in bed together, again, he's the one who turns on the light and stops it and says, I really like how good friends we are, but I don't want to ruin that.
Yeah, which I thought was great.
Well, but so I thought you would hate that.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great. I think the film is as good at dealing with the boys and the boys' interactions as it is in dealing with the girls. Though obviously, the girls are the protagonists. But unlike some of the films that we've seen, for example, you get the sense that, these boys are sexual and the girls are sexual and they've got sex on their mind. But actually, kind of, it overturns the presumptions, because actually two characters say that. There's another character who was saying, I went to this bar, and this girl came onto me and, I wasn't really into it. And, as soon as I told her that I wasn't into it, she said, gay, right? Like, so the idea that, you have to be into it because you're a man. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. But on the other hand, one of the things that makes Camille uncomfortable in staying over with those boys is that they're always watching porn, right? So these it's kind of different than some of the other things that we've been seeing, where sex doesn't come up at all, which I find odd.
Sure. Well, I expected you to have a similar pushback to Jaden Smith's character not expressing an interest in sex.
No, I like that because I think all young people are interested in sex, but actually, just because you're interested in sex doesn't mean that you're going to have sex with everybody. Just because they want.
Well, I agree. That was my perspective, and I really liked that he had this boundary, and that was just, it wasn't really about making a statement about boys overall. It was about his character and what he thinks.
Yeah. Well, I like that.
So I'm glad that you didn't hate it this time.
Well, what do you mean this time? And the other times were different.
Yeah,
they
were.
They were. No, I like that very, very much. I think the only ambivalence that I have about the film is actually, and this is the problem with this type of filmmaking, which is, dramatizing or making fictions out of real situations. So, you're using non-professional actors and you're drawing on their lives, and like the Rider in a way, right? Kind of, they are very comparable in some ways, but the difficulty in both cases actually. So in the Rider, it would have been impossible to get an actor, who was as skilled with horses as we saw in long takes. It was one of the marvels of the film, right, to see this young man do it. Likewise, in this type of film, it would, I'm sure it would have been very difficult to get something like, I don't know, a young Jodie Foster, a really great young actress who could also skateboard like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I did think that in both instances that we saw, but actually more problematic in this one, is that Camille was opaque. That like, I thought she wasn't charismatic enough to carry the film. And then also, to me, she wasn't emotionally legible. Like, you didn't get a sense of what was underneath. There was a very one-dimensional performance.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Certainly, I think the performances generally were really good, and also in the Rider, I think. I mean, I may disagree with you on that. I think the performances that have been drawn out of these non-professional actors over both films have generally been pretty good.
I think the Rider, well, because I might have misunderstood you, but when we talked earlier about it, you mentioned it as a problem, and I was saying that...
I don't think I did.
Okay, well, then I'm misremembering. Because, I initially thought it was in the Rider that, it was very...
you found them opaque, you remember saying that?
Yeah. But then in the Rider, it became one of the strengths of the film, for me. You read it, you learned to read it and to understand it in a different way. But in this one, I didn't. I did think actually that there was a lack, that there was a flesh and blood character that wasn't coming across because of the lack of skill of the young actress.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. On the other hand, I think that the girl we mentioned earlier, Nina Moran,
yes,
is charismatic as hell.
Yeah, she is,
and an absolute joy to watch. And she's the kind of she's the dirty sort of one of the group, one making jokes. And actually, one of the guys in the Q&A pointed out her resemblance to Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, and that occurred to me during the film as well. And not just her kind of physical resemblance with the long hair and the cap and that sort of thing, but also like that the part that she plays within the group of being the one who says filthy things and is always ready to make a joke and doesn't take anything seriously that anyone else does. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. And actually, I just thought all the rest of the cast were incredibly charismatic. I mean, there was the young skinny girl, who was always filming. Yeah. I mean, just her outfits alone and the way that she moved was a pleasure to look at. And then the young girl who is the one who breaks her ankle, I thought she was wonderful as well, as a performer. So I think actually the results in the film were excellent, except actually for the main character, which I think is a bit stiff and is a bit unexpressive. And I hadn't realized that the love interest was Jaden Smith.
Yeah. Will Smith, so the annoying one.
Yeah, well, he was great.
Twitter.
Yeah,
he
might be annoying on Twitter, but he was very good here.
He was annoying in After Earth as well.
Okay, he might have been annoying in 2 films previously, but he's very good here.
And there's a great kind of I asked a question in the Q&A which was about kind of the director having come from documentary, kind of what were the challenges or differences in adding a narrative. You kind of feel like in a way that there are parts of the film that don't really need a narrative. There are these whole kind of sections of there's just a song put underneath it, and it's just skating through New York or at a skate park, and it's just these beautiful montages that you live in.
Can I pick up on that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I think for me one of the great pleasures of cinema is action, right? And seeing bodies in motion. It's part of the reason why I love dance, and I love looking at athletics, and and as you get older, I find, for me at least, the interest intensifies. And it's not a sexual interest. I mean, it can be, but it's generally not. It's just, kind of the beauty and, just the beauty of watching kind of young bodies do extraordinary things, right? Yeah. And watching this film makes you think of how rarely you get shown women in that capacity. That the spectacle is actually them performing a task, a highly skilled task, rather than the spectacle just being their being, or their, sexualized being, or their kind of being sexualized for us, right? That actually kind of what you see in this film is girls, doing fantastic things on skateboards, and the pleasure in looking at that.
And constantly, also, I mean, they're constantly talking about how great they are, particularly Camelia's on a skateboard, and Jaden Smith, when Jaden's kind of trying to integrate her into the group of guys, and they're initially resistant because the animosity that the girls feel towards the boys also feel towards the girls.
Yes.
His defence is she shreds.
Yes.
And constantly that phrase "she shreds" comes up time and again, and it's not about how sexy she is or anything like that. It's that she's really fucking good at skating.
Yes. Yes.
And why can't she hang out?
And that, is very rare in cinema. So I think, and
it feels very true to life, really.
Yes.
I mean, there would be groups of guys who would just say, "Oh, she's really sexy, we should keep her about." But there are groups of guys to whom that's not the draw, or not an issue, or whatever. It's about her personality and what she's able to do and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, it feels very true to life as well,
yes.
and welcome, frankly. I really enjoyed that.
So what reservations do you have about the film? Because so far you've only said good things.
Yeah, I have only said good things. And I guess, I mean, partly just having been tired, I kind of flagged at points. I think there were just elements that were lulls to me.
Yes.
I don't know if you felt there were lulls
I did, yes.
I think the story... What I really wanted to ask about the story in the Q&A, which I didn't quite ask, is in some ways it's really quite cliche. The girl who she's just turned 18 and she's getting very kind of itchy and wanting to leave, and she does. I mean, that's quite. I suppose the thing I didn't really expect of the story is that she actually does leave. It's not just that she stays out late because she kind of resents her mum. She actually leaves and goes to New York and starts staying with other people. But then it's when she returns to her mum at the end, and things kind of get resolved quite nicely. And I quite like the apology to the group that sort of says, I want to forget about stuff that happened. I want to be friends. And very quickly the film wraps up with them all skating down the street again. But there were aspects of cliche to that just felt kind of easy.
It felt too easy. I mean, my God, imagine like living in New York on a part-time cashier salary. Mm. I mean, there were things that...
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a high-capacity living going... Well, when she stays with Janae, she's doing so because it's a dad's house. So she's able to say that. And when she's with all the guys, they are living in a high-capacity living in kind of a squat, it seems. So you can understand it to an extent, but I do agree.
It just... some few clues as to how that's manageable or whatever would have been welcome. I also think that there were aspects of the film that remained unexplored or underexplored to me. So, for example, the fact that the young girl looks like, first generation Hispanic, right? So, the mother always speaks Spanish to her. She responds in English. So, there's something there, either, about, kind of culture and integration and being part of a different kind of ethnic minority with different values. And I think there are also things that the film shows of the difference between the suburbs and the city, right? So all the New York kids are all kind of rather cool in the way they dress. And it does feel like another world. And she goes on long train rides to get there. So I think more could have been made of that,
in-house, so maybe the kind of danger of
the danger of the city, also the wonder of the city, right?
Well, there was that great bit where she's on the rooftop taking photos with Jaden Smith and the Empire State Building in the background,
scary,
and they're taking photos of kick flipping on a rooftop in front of it, and you thought, God, there might be an accident here.
Yes,
but but the image was fucking great.
The image was great. Actually, those scenes were fantastic.
Yeah.
In the film.
One thing I did like about the kind of the story and the characterization of Camille is that she comes from a broken home, so she's living with a single mother, played by Elizabeth Rodriguez, a professional actress. You recognise her from Orange is the New Black, I think. But it's not a case that the dad just isn't in the picture, and she tells this whole story to Janae when she's staying with her very early on in their friendship, about how she lived with her dad initially because she didn't get on with her mum. She chose to live with her dad when she the court came and said, who are you going to live with? And she would only see her mum once a year, and she wouldn't even get out the car on Christmas to see her because she didn't feel any sort of connection with her. And then when she got to 11 or 12 and she realised she wasn't going to be a tomboy forever, and she was going to grow up into a woman and develop and so on, that she realised she needed a mother, and so chose to live with her mum, chose to kind of make that connection with her. I just thought, I thought that from everything that we heard in the Q&A about these stories coming from real life, I would imagine that the director did suggest that characterization of Camille comes from Rochelle's real life. So I would imagine that's kind of where it comes from. Nonetheless, it felt very original to me. Like it seems so. It felt to me that so often it's the case that it's just there's one parent and the other one is gone for whatever reason, or maybe they are a fringe figure, but not that both would be a figure and that there would be a switch.
Yes, and that it would be a switch due to the child's choice.
Yeah, the child's choice, and also the child's development, and not only that, but they both will be kind of a constant figure in the child's life, even if they're not living with them. I thought that was really interesting. I mean, there's one point where when the mum's really worried about her early on when she's hanging out in New York City more and more with the skate kitchen girls. She finds her at the skate park, and one thing she says is, "I even called your dad," so which was the first kind of inkling I had. Like, okay, so like the dad is still around, right? There's something alive about the relationship still. I don't know. What do you make of that? I thought that was really original.
Yes, no, I like that very much. I mean, I think the film had many original things. I think that was one of them. Again, I think the father in Brooklyn kind of being so nurturing and baking and and having all the girls in without any dark things about it. I thought that was lovely to see.
Do you remember Precious?
Yes, I do remember.
What's
Precious.
his name? Lee Daniels film.
Yes, the one about the fat girl who gets abused.
Yeah, it's like every kind of thing that could go wrong in this girl's life has gone wrong. There's that bit where she's pregnant and she's in hospital and all her girlfriends are around her, and the doctor, played by Lenny Kravitz, is there, and like all the girls are kind of flirting with him, and it's like and there's no relationship there at all. There's no familial relationship, so like it could get quite creepy. But it's the most wholesome relationship you've ever seen in your entire life. That all these young girls just really fancy this guy, and he's just like happy to sort of he's very there's something very knowing and wholesome about the way they interact that I think was. It's not exactly the same in this. It's not exactly like I fancy your dad, but there's a way that they get along, which is incredibly wholesome, just lovely to see.
Yes,
that reminded me of that.
Good. We should probably wrap up. So, final thoughts on the film?
I really enjoyed it. I think for the most part, it balances the kind of documentary aspects and the narrative aspects pretty well. And I think although the narrative has elements of cliche, I think the way it works to bring out aspects of these girls' real lives, and the way of life that they have, and the feminist project going on in it, basically, of the kind of the force of personality of these girls, that they deserve, like anyone else, to have their place and be able to skate and so on and so forth. I really like, and I think that you can tell how it works differently to how a pure documentary would work, that I think is to the film's benefit.
Yes. I think so. I mean, I think it's a film with problems, but I think it's also a film that does things that are so rare still in cinema that, they're a joy to see, and also, to add a dimension that are kind of very much worth supporting, really. So, I don't want to make it sound that you have to go see this film for worthy reasons, because it's also a film that is full of different kinds of pleasures, really. So I suppose that would be my overall kind of mixed view. It's a film with some problems, particularly in the central casting, and also in the way that kind of the narrative structure is not quite threaded together, so that it does have, you know, some lags in between. But actually, the world depicted, you know, the focus on intersectionality, the generosity of the film and the filmmakers towards their subjects and the world that they live in. And then actually the thrill of the skating that you see, and the skating being focused on young women, you know, makes up for any faults for me. I think it's very much worth seeing.
Yeah, definitely worth seeing. Really enjoyed it. And it's coming out very soon.
It's coming out on September the 28th, so we have some time.
Do we?
Yeah.
But it definitely deserves your support.
Yes.
It's great. So thanks for listening. I'm doing Jose's job now. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, eavesdroppingatthemovies.com, and wherever else we are.
iTunes, SoundCloud.
Not Instagram. I don't understand Instagram. It creeps me out. It's for I'm already too old for it somehow.
I'm on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Jesus, how old am I? Right. Thanks for listening, folks.
Have a good night.